All right. Well, welcome everybody. We'll give it a couple more minutes. Looks like we got some people coming in on this one. So, hey, Ed, good to see you, man.
Same, Daryl. Good to see you.
And then for those joining, it is
You.
totally optional if you want to keep your cameras on or off. If you just want to kind of listen in for other dialogue, or if you want to ask questions, whatever you want to do, this is kind of our first stab at this one. So, the idea of focusing these tech talks on a webinar. So we're going to see how this works out. So we want to, make it valuable for everybody. So, hopefully get a good dialogue on this. And we've basically got an hour time spot going, but if we run out of gas, we can let everybody go back and, finish your lunches at your desk or whatever you're going to do. That may be another webinar is the idea of, don't eat at your desk. So I get on that soapbox all the time.
Then we
So
don't get to eat.
yeah, look at that. What do you got? Sour apples, Chris? Like, is it like the sour apple rings? Oh, yeah, that's just anything
Now,
that comes.
only time I get to eat is during PTI meetings.
You have to multitask. Well, hey everybody, welcome. So for those that are joining, just because we sent you an invite, welcome. We're going to be discussing a webinar that we did yesterday, and the way that we're going to be kind of managing this is kind of an open forum. So for those of you that tuned in, the webinar yesterday was on tactical communications, and hopefully it was valuable. It was very, very concise. Normally, that curriculum is a 3-day curriculum. Back when I taught it for law enforcement, I got it down to like a business day for working professionals, and then getting it down to 45 minutes was a chore. So I felt like I was kind of just belting it out at one point. So that's why we figured, giving everybody an opportunity to kind of do a deep dive today and kind of ask questions and clarify points or whatever you guys want to do. So with that being said, I'm going to open it up to the group. And if you have a question, just for etiquette's sake, if you could just raise your hand and we'll kind of address you and let you speak so we don't talk over each other. But anybody wants to ask a question, make a comment, throw fruit, whatever you want to do. Yeah, Chris.
I thought it was really good. I feel like I've seen that content before. And not, I don't never took the course, but as somebody who's really struggled with, in municipalities, you always have, I think you mentioned it as like you have those directors. Like there's always that director that is the hardest to, you just don't get along with, or like no matter what you do, you just can't get on the same page. I thought it was a really useful curriculum, much better than what was, when we were doing the dealing with a-holes kind of thing. It's like this is such a better approach to
Yeah.
it's the approach of, okay, how do you keep yourself patient and calculated um and effective? And I think I'd really love this if this is going to be part of the curriculum going forward.
Yeah, this is kind of the swap in for that. For those that have been through the CGCIO program in recent years, there's a section that's kind of on dealing with a-holes, and it was kind of fun but edgy. And the I think this is kind of a better tactical approach on that. I mean, it works for me. I just can't pull off what Alan pulled off on that one. So this one's my safe space to deal with that subject. So. Yeah, thanks, man. So yeah, I think that's kind of the target on this is I think for what I've seen with CIOs in my experience has been the roughest customers communication wise are either your peers in the leadership team who have competing interests. I mean, you get department heads that are kind of, well, I'm a bit of a technologist myself. They remember their password on something or they set up their iPad, so therefore they're all good to go. um, or the ones that are just technology resistant and they're just defending the way things have always been because now you're the threat. that you're going to change things on me. You're going to make life difficult. I've spent 20 years mastering the processes we have. You're going to come in and disrupt them. And that seems to be, my experiences, those were always my toughest customers. Senior leadership, it was just the hardest part was money. Because they were always looking at me like I was like that friend that's always asking to bum $20.
Yeah, if you could tell them a good story, you can get the money. Whereas when somebody is toe to toe with you and it's a power struggle, it's a turf war. And I think that's where I also loved your part where, it really is when we do our debriefs on almost everything around here, it always comes back to communication. And to me, the anti-communication tool is being busy. If you're busy, what suffers the most is communication. You don't get the message to the right people, and then you step on toes, and then they're mad, and then you spend double the time doubling back to try to make everybody happy. And that's, I think, just the nature of this as tactical. I love that term because it is tactical. It's like a tactical communication tool that you can teach your whole group. And you're also talking, I love common language. So if you come up with a common language where you can all speak, this is how we're doing it, and this is the tactical way we're approaching it. And maybe it's because I also have a bit of a public safety background, but I love when things are black and white like that. Like, this is the tactical approach.
Yeah, it's the intentionality of it. Because I think there's so many times when we aren't intentional about how we talk, we just kind of freewheel it, and it's a wild card. So you end up with these really wild results that sometimes take more energy than the problem you're addressing. So
I did have to laugh because that coming from you was really funny to me, but that was just me.
yeah, well, I mean, those who
I'm like,
can do, those who can't teach.
Retirement's growing you up, Daryl. Like, it's
So hey, we got some more people. Anybody else have any comments or questions while we're here?
Well, the biggest thing that I found in is, we had, just like you said, we had, upper management, the commissioners and everything questioning every single penny that I spent. Why do you have to do this? Why do you have to do that? And even though you had all the conversations, but geez, once you get hit with ransomware, those questions go away real fast. So it's very interesting how the mentality changes when all of a sudden they see the quote horror show of it, but don't understand it until then.
Yeah, and that's a tough way to do it, dude. That's kind of like the Daffy Duck cartoon where he blows himself up on stage to get
Exactly.
everybody's attention. And, ideally, you don't want to wait till you have like a crisis for everybody to suddenly understand the importance of investment in cybersecurity infrastructure, what IT's doing.
But unfortunately, too many of these administrators now, we might be, somewhat a little unique because, like, me and Dale started talking that we're in a shore community. Their focus is what can be seen by the public. IT is behind the scenes. They care about ribbon cuttings and new fishing piers and concerts and parades, and IT is not important until it is
But
important. And that's the unfortunate part when you try to get it in, getting the buy-in from the city administrator is probably the most important part and probably the most difficult part because their associations talk a different story. Fortunately, they talk negative to IT, at times, where they will sit there and say, well, you don't need this because you can do this, and they don't need this. So they listen to that a lot of times, and that's become a very hard and difficult sell when you have not only your administrator listening to somebody else, but not wanting to listen to you. It's a struggle, and it's oftentimes, one of those ones where you have to play a juggling act.
well, and I think so one of the tools that I figured out on that one is it's kind of the chess versus checkers. It's you're not waiting until it's kind of you're head to head on something, wait until budget or wait until you're kind of in the ring. I would take the effort, and there were two things. One is I would do lunch or coffee with every department head as often as I could. Every day I sat at my desk and ate lunch alone was a loss. Like I would chalk that up as that's a wasted hour on my part. Like if I'm accomplishing something, if I'm in charge, I got a broader sense of duties. And I think a big part of it is it's being the liaison between IT and the rest of that world that can be hostile. And being able to go to lunch or go to coffee with a department head without an agenda and just say, hey, I just want to talk. Just want to get to know you. Like, let them do the talking first. And that's kind of that gathering intel on things that you can then leverage to accomplish what you need. So for instance, when I was with the county, the entire portfolio for transportation and development hated IT. That there had been some bad blood when there was consolidation about a decade before, and they lost their own IT department. And there was, just a decade later, everybody was still in place and everybody still hated what happened. And so I just started like, hey, I'd reach out to the head of planning, reach out to the head of transportation, reach out to the ACIO or ACEO that was over the whole portfolio, assistant CEO, and just, hey, can we go have lunch? And the first time I went to lunch with the assistant CEO, she was tough as nails. She could have run a Fortune 500 company. I mean, she showed up and she just iced me. She was just looking me dead in the eye, like, what do you want? And I just said, hey, I just want to know what you're up to. Like, what are your pain points right now? What's going on with, I want to know, I want to understand. And it took a while, it took some investment, but once she started breaking it down, I was able to say, well, if we were able to fix that in the permit management software, if we were able to modernize that process, if we were able to take that digital, we can help with those pain points. And then the next thing I know, I'm getting phone calls from her. Like, hey, when we talked, you talked about updating our permitting system. Because my team is telling me they've told us we won't do any upgrades, that they're not even doing patching. They're just like, leave it alone. And we're just telling them, we're kind of like, dude, at some point, this is going to be bad. And that didn't work. Threatening them that, hey, if you're not getting your version upgrades, if you're not doing security patching on that, if you're basically leave it alone, ain't gonna work. Once we got them kind of talking, we could now start wedging, in there and getting them to soften up on some of those stances. And at the tail end, we had a pretty decent relationship. I'm not gonna say it was 100%. I mean, we still kind of had to be frosty with how we dealt with them, but we were light years ahead of where we were when it started. So, and the other thing is, dude, with your electeds, this is kind of a cheat. Start showing up at their events. If they have ribbon cuttings, if they have, hey, opening a park, we're opening a local business, go to those chamber of commerce things and just show up, just standing there, because IT tends to operate in the background. And I think that's a major disadvantage for us is the whole silent service routine, because if you're out of sight, out of mind, and the only time they see you is when you're asking for money or telling them there's a problem, that becomes the association with IT. And when I was with Rancho, I was at all of the stuff that, because our council was just like you described. They wanted flashy. They wanted to open up new libraries. They wanted to open up new, parks, all about kind of what can I show the community. So I would just show up at those and show that IT supports that. We want that too. We like parks. We like, monuments. We like things like that. But we're also part of the infrastructure that goes into supporting those things. And, being able to kind of peel back and listen when a council member is like, well, why don't we have Wi-Fi in this park? Well, do you want Wi-Fi in the park? Let's talk about what that looks like. Let's talk about what that, pros and cons. Just being present and making them see you outside of IT is a huge kind of play for getting that relationship going.
Oh yeah, I do all of those things. I have those kind of conversations. It's just still a struggle, but but I work with it and, do what needs to be done.
Yeah, it's not magic. I'm not promising it's going to
Oh,
work.
no, not at all.
I've had success with it, but it's 2 steps forward, 1 steps back. So,
Yeah.
right. All right.
Being like tactical or effective at communication, I guess in general, or tactical communication is also tied into like having a strong emotional, was it IQ or emotional intelligence? Like, they tie in together, right?
Yeah, emotional intelligence is important for it. It's just understanding your own, triggers and kind of how you regulate yourself emotionally. I think the more you observe it, the more control you have, the better your observations are. It's a self-feeding cycle. Just like denial is kind of the spiral on the other side.
Yeah.
If you don't look at yourself, if you just have this fixed view that I'm right and everybody else is wrong and I'm a victim and everybody else is at fault, you tend not to look at the things you're saying and doing that are undermining your own success, and you just tend to kind of attribute it externally. So low EQ, you tend to kind of look at everybody's against me. This is not my problem. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody else is out to get me. High EQ, you always kind of look at yourself like, am I adapting in the best way to this? So,
I got a question.
yeah, Mariah, what's up?
Hi.
Hi.
So how do you respond when the answer, when you're going into a situation and everyone's answer except yours is, well, can't you just do that with AI?
Yeah, boy, AI has become the boogeyman. So I think a good response on AI and what I've been kind of coaching organizations on with that is AI is not the solution to every problem. So let's talk about the problem first and figure out what the best solution is. And if AI seems like it's a good ingredient in that mix, then let's talk about it. But I've also kind of like one of the webinars I want to do is the primer for AI, that
Mhm.
getting us all in the same space where we kind of all have an understanding or common understanding of the challenges that you have to overcome before you can effectively implement AI. Because the vendors are largely not doing that. And I got out of the space before it kind of started taking off. But every vendor that was coming in was basically saying it's plug and play, and it's the furthest thing from the truth. I think the best analogy I got is it's like hiring an intern. And imagine taking an intern, giving them administrative credentials and just saying, go to town. Like,
Yeah.
whatever you want to do, it's fair game. No control, no visibility. That's what an AI will do.
And access to everything.
Yeah. And no context, no ability to kind of understand what things are inappropriate, what things are behind the scenes, what things aren't. You give it access to your tenant, you give it access to a data source. If you don't know what that data source is, it's gonna provide some shock and awe moments for you. But yeah, I have seen that phenomenon where people are coming in. We had a department, I won't disclose it, but we had a department that I may have already talked about that said, we want to use AI for our call taking. And we're like, okay, you want to use it in lieu of the phone tree? And they go, no, we don't want to have to answer the phone anymore. It's like, you're saying that you don't want to speak to constituents anymore? Well, no, they said the AI will do it. Like, okay, let's talk. Let's have a conversation about what AI will do and what it won't do, because you're talking about an AI completely taking over your public facing functions, and I think that's not what it does. And it's tough. Having those conversations are tough, and that's where being able to kind of come in with a strategic mindset on it, that this is taking the message back to a central message instead of getting defensive, instead of kind of, because some people just like, no, I've heard it, I saw it, I saw it on the internet, and I believe it. I believe it's going to fix all our problems, and I just need you to sign. The worst ones is, I just need you to sign this agreement. That I've already got this ironed out. I've already got the budget for it. Here's the document. Please don't get in my way. And those are tough, because then you're under the gun. They're like, hey, I want to get this in front of council at the next meeting. I want to get this on the board agenda. I want to get it in before budget. I want to get it in before the fiscal year ends. now they've given you this kind of ultimatum almost. And that's where the other advantage to a tactical approach is, even if you know you're not going to win, you start to build your defense for escalating it. That instead of going to the city manager or the county executive or city executive and saying, well, I just don't think it's a good idea. It's, hey, I had a talk with that department head. I explained what the preparatory work would be. I explained what the limitations are. I explained what the threats are. Here's what the conversation looked like. We couldn't come to an agreement. We need to have you decide on this one, rather than just coming in cold with them running and giving their side of the story, you running and giving your side of the story. And I've seen this where city managers send you both back and like, you guys go and figure this out and come to me with a set of decisions. If you can kind of in the conversation, just, get to a point where, hey, we disagree, but we understand what we disagree on. And we just need the city manager is, hey, we've discussed the risks on this. If you accept this, these are the risks you're accepting. So I need you to understand what acceptance of these terms mean. Or if we don't get that, you've kind of helped the other side say, this will be the impact on services to the community. That we're short on staff, we're going to be losing funding, we've got an uncertain thing, this will be the impact. But now, instead of the two of you kind of bickering on both sides, it gives you an opportunity to kind of go in lockstep and kind of like, hey, let's just distill this down to my take and your take, and we both understand each other's takes. We both understand the risks. You're saying you're willing to accept the risks that I've posed. I'm saying I'm willing to accept the risks that you've posed, and let's get a decision on that. But you can come in with a more complete decision-making package than just a dogfight that escalates.
So you're saying like there needs to be like a webinar or a tool on communicating effectively or tactically about AI, what it is, what it can do, what it can't do, what it shouldn't do, versus, I mean, because I know we've got an AI plan, we've got an AI, but it's just like, to me, a plan's like, okay, a document that sits on the shelf kind of thing still. But if you have this kind of communications, the back and forth, that sinks in a little bit more than reading something. I don't know if that makes sense, but.
Yeah, I think that I think a good starting point would be for us to come up with a common framework. And then maybe that's a PTI thing. Maybe that's something where we kind of maybe get a task force together and say, hey, look, let's talk about the challenges that we're seeing, because for me, this is all about prep. This is about, these are the things you need to have in order in your organization, the things you need to understand in order to implement it. Because the problem is AI right now, all the AI models are a rolling problem. That yesterday's LLM isn't tomorrow's. Now they're talking about agentic, and agentic's going to have its own hype cycle, and it's going to kind of, and when you're talking about automatic incorporation of AI services into existing SaaS and PaaS platforms, where it's just suddenly, oh, we did a version upgrade and poof, there's an AI agent, and you're looking at each other like, who ordered this guy? And what does it do? And how does it do it? It's, you need to have kind of more of, to that point, a strategy for AI and some common values where, hey, these are the cases where we're, looking to adopt it and we're willing to take the risk. These are the cases where we're not. These are the places where we're not going to put ourselves at risk with AI. And it could vary by organization. Some are more gunslingers and they're willing to take a lot of risk. Others are super conservative and we're not going to get egg on our face on this. So any other thought? I mean, we don't have to stay on AI, but any other kind of thoughts, or anybody else?
I'm bringing this to my manager team next week.
Okay, go Mariah, do it.
I loved it. I thought it was great. And I have been talking about it yesterday and all day today about, it's just such a creative and thoughtful way of presenting a topic that, you hear about it all the time. And the way that you were presenting it was, I don't know, somehow it was a lot easier to absorb.
Well, I mean, it was for cops, so it was definitely for lowest common denominator learning.
Well, then that's me.
You're being recorded, Daryl.
I don't work for the cops anymore. So,
I thought I'm looking at it again because I was really, I love the ending, like the actions to deflect verbal abuse. I mean, these are so, I think, you know, just having them spelled out like this is really powerful of, you know, it, and also the triggers piece. It's just knowing what triggers you. And again, from years of knowing, not knowing what triggered me and being reactive when, you know, it was more karate than judo. Like people are coming at you and it's like they're throwing punches and you're just trying to react versus like, okay, this it's more nuanced than that. Like you can control this. It's almost like a Jedi mind trick kind of game, right? Like it's just like you're figuring it out and you're just trying to, or a matrix thing, like you're just trying to like stay in the matrix and keep your cool. But I just thought the last three slides are really powerful closing out of like this could be its own one day thing of like I can see, and maybe the class does this, I haven't taken the class, but the role playing that you could do in this scenario to teach people how to behave, like, pit somebody against another person as a challenging manager and then, see if they can diffuse the situation.
yeah, that's what we would do. Like when I would do
Yeah.
the all day for HR or for new managers for kind of new leadership, that's what we do is do role playing on you've got an irate citizen that's come to the counter, you've got an employee, you've got, and just kind of play out a bunch of different scenarios. And then those are fun. It's and the cool thing about those is that if you're the person playing it would always do it with gusto because we're like, hey, we want you to be difficult. I could do that. and but you would see some of the triggers come up. You would see the kind of like they would react as though it's real. Like you'd get people that because they're in front of an audience and it's this isn't scripted. You've got to react. And to get them to control their emotions and not just instinctively either cower and kind of go frozen goat. Like that was the most common response is people would just kind of meh and just go over it, just like they'd vapor lock. And I've seen that happen. I've seen that happen in real time in staff meetings and other things where somebody just comes across the table and they've been triggered and they're gonna get their say in, and suddenly they're going personal, like they're bringing up stuff from years ago and they're bringing up stuff that people have forgotten, and you tap into somebody's emotional reservoir, and sometimes some weird stuff comes out. And you just need to be controlled on that because what they're looking for is when somebody gets into that mode, they want to tango. Like they don't want a logical response. They want to feel the justification of you coming back on them because now it feels, yeah, you're an idiot and I'm an idiot and we're going to fight. And there's a part of us as humans that it's the adrenaline rush. There's an excitement and a sense of exhilaration in heavy conflict. And the worst part is when you win, because if you win through brute force, the damage is irreparable. If you win
Totally.
by convincing them that they are a bad person, that they are wrong inherently, just wrong about everything, just that final crush him victory, like Mortal Kombat, or combat, finish him and you rip off their head. And then, if
No,
you get a
it's
win like that, the damage is done forever.
well, I love the relation to karate for that because it was the longer it goes on. I had one of these kind of relationships that went on for close to a decade where you get so good at like knowing your opponent that you know exactly what buttons to push. So it turns into like a sword fight immediately, like a samurai sword fight,
Yeah.
because it goes deep real quick. And so unless it's resolved, and again, I feel like I've matured out of that I learned a lot from that relationship that one, most people aren't like that. And but it's the importance of not letting it go on, of figuring out a way to diffuse it early on, and then coming to a working relationship of mutual respect. Because if the longer it goes on, it is this competition where it's like Karate Kid 1 through 10. And it's like, okay, we're in our 10th year of Karate Kid and here, let's go. We're going after it again.
Cobra Kai is back at it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's interesting because one of the most disarming things that I've encountered in communication, and even with when I would teach cops on this, is that a moment of candor and giving them a point, conceding a point, not just I am in an authoritarian role, you are not, I am in charge, I am right on all points. Conceding even a small point, genuinely conceding it, saying, you know what, you've got a point there. I was wrong. I see what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. Let's talk about that. It opens up a whole new framework because people aren't geared up for that. It's not how we were taught to talk. That this was the whole kindergarten thing that I really do, just watching the dynamics, the vast majority of people let kindergarten rules dictate their communication style from cradle to grave. It's how they communicate with their friends, with their family, with their, coworkers, their employees, their superiors, whatever. It's, I'm either going to yield, I'm going to fight, or I'm just going to run away and tell somebody. And when you actually just sit down and say, you know what, you've got a point. I want to understand it. Let's start by just help me understand what you're trying to get across. I want to understand what's got you afraid. I want to understand what's got you upset on this. Giving them a chance to kind of just talk without opposition just lets them tone it down. So, because yeah, with the cop thing, I mean, and I saw it firsthand. I had the same observation that George Thompson did, is that I knew officers. I worked in 911 for over 20 years, and I had great friends but I knew every one of them. I knew which ones, when I sent them on a call, someone was going to go to the hospital or jail. That was that was the inevitable outcome. Send them on a barking dog, send them on a cat in a tree, send them on whatever. Somebody's going to the hospital, somebody's going to jail. And there were other ones that I could send out on a biker gang bar fight, and I knew that it would all end peacefully. I knew that everything would be just fine. And it always held true. There were ones that they just put the effort in. And a lot of them, they learned it through hard knocks. They learned that, hey, if I can conduct myself in the right way, I can diffuse this so I don't have to get in a fight. But I mean, back in the 80s and 90s, that was kind of, it was full contact sport. And so that was, I started teaching this in 96, 97. And I taught it through to the early 2000s, 2002, 2000.
So it kind of gets to what we've talked about too in the class, like be a diplomat, when to be a diplomat, or how to be a diplomat.
Well, it's taking on the mentality of you're always a diplomat.
Yeah.
That in the absence of another adult in the room, be the adult in the room. Don't lower yourself to the demeanor of other people if everybody else is operating at a different level. If you're the only one strategic, that's a huge advantage. There's a bit that's Machiavellian about this. If everyone else is doing playground rules and you can take this to another level, once again, how many times have we played checkers with somebody that's using chess mentality? They're just trying to capture pieces. They're not strategic. They're like, oh, wait, don't I win if I get all the, no, that's not how it works. It's checkmate. I need to get you to where there's no other moves you can make to defend your argument. And that's the strategy. So you give up what you have to, give up whatever pieces you got to. There's no sacred pieces. The only sacred piece is your core argument, which is that king, and you defend that, but you're willing to sacrifice all these other things to defend that and understand what things are a king and what aren't. What's the difference between a core, like for IT, there are security measures, there are infrastructure issues, there are all sorts of things that are our kings, where it's like, I cannot compromise on that. If you've got council members that say, you know what, we don't want to have to manage individual accounts. We don't want multi-factor. We just want one account that's council@cityofwhatever.com, and we all want the same password to it because we just don't want to. And you're like, wait a second, like that's no. And they're like, yeah, that lets me, my grandson takes care of my stuff. So I want to give him the credentials for it because I don't understand. When I go home, I got the internet thing and I got all that and I don't have time for that. And having to argue that down, like that's a king piece. And that's where you've got to, it's a tough one. because your city manager's going, dude, I would rather just give him this. Like, are you saying you can't, or are you saying you won't? And that's where you have to have a studied response on that. Because if you just say, if you make me do that, I'm quitting, or if you make me do that, I can't be responsible, then it's like, well, I'm going to do it, and you will be responsible, and we'll have another conversation after this. But being able to have a buildup on that of, hey, can we work with the council member? Maybe this is an opportunity to work with the entire council on cybersecurity 101, end user management. Because my guess is if this council member can't handle a password here, what do you want to bet that their password on every account they got at home is Bosco, like from the Seinfeld episode, where all of their banking accounts, all of their social media accounts, and I guarantee you that council member that can't understand multi-factor is all over Facebook. Has the most prolific Facebook account in the city right now. So let's not pretend that they're digitally unsophisticated. They're choosing how they want to approach it. And we as a city have an obligation to maintain a standard here. And so you just build the argument up, but you would accompany it with, let's talk about how we can get them some resources and kind of guide them through that, and not single out that council member. Let's do it the entire senior leadership team. Let's, we'll all kind of put our hands in, and we'll all feel more comfortable if everybody takes a hit. But that way you're thinking outside the box and kind of trying to de-escalate rather than get into conflict with a single council member. And I know none of you have ever gone through that. I'm sure all of your councils, all of your elected boards are very sophisticated and very accommodating when it comes to cybersecurity and cyber discipline. But, I just for those that have had that problem.
I thought you were being sarcastic.
Yeah, I'm
Everyone
sure.
had somebody.
It was a reference to the Bosco again. That was
Okay.
epic.
Yeah, but it's true. I can't tell you. I had a council member literally slip me a piece of paper. It was just this crusty piece of paper that's been in his wallet forever. And he said, this is the password for every single account I have. So whatever this is will work. And I looked at him like, I almost went frozen goat on that one. I was like, you can't even give me that. Like, please don't do this to me. Like, maybe if I fake a heart attack right now, it can get me out of this. Just have paramedics come and scoop me up, and he can put that back in his wallet, and I'll pretend this never happened. But I got my cybersecurity guy, who at the time was also my infrastructure and also my network guy, because that was just the way it was. And he's looking at me wide-eyed, like, is this happening? Is this really happening right now? But those are the kind of things we deal with. So any other thoughts, comments on the presentation, anything that was confusing to anybody, anything that you felt was not accurate? Like, it's my best stab. It's based on my training, my stuff. But oh, Mariah, well, if you got to go, it's good to see you. So,
Sorry.
no, that's okay.
I hate that I have to leave, because that was one of the most useful sessions that I've attended in a very long time. So
I'm glad to hear that. So
All
hopefully
right.
the next one will be useful too.
See you guys.
All right, take
Bye.
care.
Daryl, can you provide the author of the book? You mentioned in the presentation a book called Noise. Who's the author on that?
Yeah, so let me look that up. Normally I have a bookshelf. I have another office that has the bookshelf with all that. I will
I kind of went looking, and I think I found it. There were a couple different books, but I think I found it. I just wanted to confirm.
I'll know by the cover. So by Daniel Kahneman.
Thank you.
And
Yep, I think
Oliver
that's the one
Sibony.
I found. Yep.
So that book, I was introduced to that. Our CEO at Riverside County, every year he would have a book that was kind of not mandatory reading, but it was strongly suggested reading for the executive leaders in the county. And that was one of the books he recommended. And it's one of the best ones on kind of that aspect of differentiating what's just kind of noise, what's just interfering information versus this kind of core, what I actually need to respond to, what I need to care about. And I feel like it's super relevant now.
Yes.
So I'll put the link in there. So let me try. This will be the Amazon link. It's not a bias towards Jeff Bezos, but it's the most generic one. So there's the link to get that
Awesome. Thank you.
book on Amazon.
Cool.
So any other thoughts or questions? All right. Well, if everybody's kind of got what they need out of it, we can wrap up a little early, like I say, let you get back to eating your snacks or whatever you're doing for lunch. The next one, we probably will be talking about how you should not be eating snacks out of cellophane at your desk for lunch. You should be out and about. You should be meeting people. That is your hour to network. Coffee in the morning, lunch in the afternoon, drinks after work if you need to. So I can't tell you how 2-drink conversations have helped me tremendously with a lot of these things we talked about in the communication thing. So get somebody out, get them a couple drinks, kind of get them in a peaceful place. We solved a huge issue over margaritas once in the county with the county council. So I thought that guy was a stone wall, and turns out you get a couple of margaritas in him, he's kind of fun. So, but it works. So. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for tuning in. This was great. I love seeing everybody here. I love the participation. Hopefully, we can keep it up, and send us stuff that you want to hear about. We're developing the webinar series. We'll hopefully put an agenda out, but I want to make it valuable for all of you. So
That was the only thing I was going to add. Yeah, if you have any ideas for future kind of discussion topics, that would be great.
yep, absolutely.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Good
Thanks,
day.
everybody. Take
Thank you,
care.
guys.
Great to
Thanks.
see you all.
Great, thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.